Right, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I have to start with an apology. Always, well, never a good way to start a talk. I'm afraid it's traditional with any talk about probiotics that you start with a slide describing probiotics. I'm sorry, that's just the rules. If I miss the slide, I think they confiscate my microbiota or something. It's not very pleasant. But just in case no one's ever heard of probiotics before, this is what probiotic bacteria are. Very good, I can move on. So this modern idea of sort of probiotics actually dates back to the turn of the 20th century. It was noticed that there were these Bulgarian peasants living in some isolated valley. They had these ridiculously long lifespans. And so there's a nice little slide showing some of the residents of this valley, and they put down these very long lifespans down to the use of soured milk. And so specifically, Eli Metchnikoff at the time decided it must have been these bacteria, these fermentative bacteria that were responsible for this, and he really kicked off this idea of this modern concept of probiotic bacteria. I quite like this idea of one of these unintended consequences of extending your life, that you can get to 101 and still be answerable to your mother. But never mind. So why study probiotic bacteria now? Well, they've actually been part of the human diet for millennia, or at least the genera have, and there's evidence to say that it's been part of the human diet from a very early stage. And also, as mentioned in the previous speaker, this idea of the hygiene hypothesis, or there's another expression of it as the old friends hypothesis, that we've sort of co-evolved with some of these bacteria. And a very perhaps striking example was presented yesterday with the Bifidobacterium infantis being sort of in the infant gut right from the start, and it seems to be feeding on this human milk oligosaccharide component. So it seems to be that these sorts of bacteria are actually part of the human, being human. And also it's a nice idea that health benefits being delivered via food, that we've sort of gotten away from, we concentrated on food as nutrition only, maybe it has other benefits as well. And obviously there's strong synergy between these sorts of bacteria. Most probiotic bacteria, lactic acid bacteria, not all, but certainly the majority, and there's that strong synergy then between dairy fermentations and probiotic bacteria, which obviously good for a dairy company to get into. And there's the money. Probiotics are a big business, expected to keep growing, and so yeah, even ignoring the whole sort of infant formula market, we're still talking about $54 billion New Zealand worldwide. So there's quite a bit of money out there to be made from bugs. So this is a slide put together showing the health benefits of probiotics. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but if you go and search PubMed or any one of these databases and you look for the health benefits of probiotics, you can find a paper, at least one paper, which will be saying, yes, our strain of probiotic does this. Fantastic. So the problem with this, well, there are sort of two problems, I guess, that sort of derive from this. One is you get this sort of approach. This is a leaflet that arrived in my mailbox some years ago now, but they're selling a yogurt capsule. Look at all the wonderful things this capsule can do for you. If you had dull hair, this is your probiotic. And you've got a huge list of things that probiotics can do for you. And unfortunately, it begins to sound a bit like this, our old friend snake oil. And if you look, I think there are one or two things which do appear on both lists. So there's a question of consumer trust. How can a probiotic actually provide you with all these health benefits? Surely this is complete rubbish. And the other problem is consumer choice. There are a lot of probiotics. I'm not sure if all of those are probiotics, but at least one of those aisles are going to be probiotics. You will find probiotics in yogurt, you will find supplements, and they'll all be trying to tell you something. How do we get to the consumer that they should be buying, this probiotic as opposed to that probiotic? So, way back in the 1990s, Fonterra decided to get into probiotics, and started a program which ended up with 4 candidate strains, of which 2 were commercialised. And yes, that's John Smart. John Smart did science. And this is proof. And all of this is obviously a testament to his legacy. And also Pramod Gopal is also in the audience, another author on here, so they've done very well, both of them, from these humble beginnings. So yes, we had 2 strains. We had a Lactobacillus and a Bifidobacterium. Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis HN019, which we trademarked as DR10, and then also had a Lactobacillus rhamnosus strain, which we HN01, which we trademarked DR20. So both of them have been studied now quite extensively. They're both patent protected. They're both halal and kosher certified, which has turned out to be ridiculously useful. And if not a little strange, having sort of the religious people sort of wandering around your facilities having a bit of a look, but that's been extremely useful. But I'll just sort of go in a bit more detail about the strains and what we've sort of done with them. So the other thing, just revisiting that definition again, used from this definition, we've sort of developed a philosophy, if you like, to guide our research. And so to have a probiotic bacteria, it's got to be safe. So obviously it's got to have no adverse effects on the host. It's got to be stable, and that has 2 aspects to it. It's got to reach the consumer in a live state, because that's part of the definition. And it's also got to sort of make it through the gastrointestinal tract. So it's got to actually make it to the gut, being alive and happy. And lastly, it's got to be effective. We've actually got to provide a health benefit to the host. So in terms of safety, safety is boring. Unless there is a problem or an issue, in which case safety is terrifying. But we've been taking this quite slow and careful, and we've gone through a lot of the sort of safety aspects of these, both these strains. And we're just actually discussing this morning the importance of strain identification. Again, because I think of our dairy background and the fact that we've been growing specific strains for dairy for many years. We've got the sort of strain identification nailed early, which has been extremely useful. But again, there's this whole list of things we've got to work through, sort of animal studies and in vitro models, working up into humans. And that's the sort of most powerful safety evidence of all. We can give it to humans, different ages, from birth to elderly, and we don't see adverse effects. And all this information then can build, and we can get we have FDA notified GRAS on both these strains. And those are extremely boring documents, I have to say, but again, they've been very useful for us. So moving then on to efficacy, we established early that both the strains are quite good at promoting some immune biomarkers. And so particularly the natural killer cell and phagocytic cells, both the activities of these cell types were improved. And we could show this by animal feeding experiments, and we could show this in multiple human trials. If you feed people either HN01 or HN019, you improve the ability of NK cells to recognize tumor cell targets. You improve the ability of phagocytic cells to phagocytize. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So what? We can't exactly slap. You will improve your NK cells on the side of a yogurt and expect that to work. So it's really the issue became then, how do we take these biomarkers and turn them into something that consumers will recognize, that consumers will want to have. So just having a quick look at HN019 first. We did quite a large study some years ago where we had 2 groups of children. Both of them were fed fortified milk. One of these fortified milks contained a probiotic, and it also contained a prebiotic. So these are sort of the oligosaccharides that can help probiotics to grow, or lactobacilli or bifidobacteria to grow in the gut. So we had this prebiotic in there as well, and it was fed over a 12-month period, and then these kids were sort of followed over 2 years, and we looked at various sort of parameters. And again, I have to apologise. I talked to someone yesterday. He said, "Don't use tables, just graphs." This is a table. I'm sorry, but it just shows there were a whole bunch of outcomes we had, and we could show then for various outcomes that there were benefits of having this probiotic-prebiotic mix, which was very good. Some of the effects were sort of small, but again, from a population level, there's still quite useful effects of having these probiotic and prebiotic around. One thing we didn't sort of expect was that this blend actually did quite well in reducing anemia in this population, or anemia and iron deficiency. In both groups, the symbiotic group and the control group were fed this fortified milk, so there was more iron in the diet than they would have probably normally had, and yet we could still see an improvement by having this prebiotic in there. We're not entirely sure what this is due to, but it did seem to be a real effect. So overall, in terms of translating these sort of immune biomarkers into effects that consumers can latch onto, then we can start talking about a number of sort of these protective effects. And in particular, we were looking at this respiratory tract disease. And we've done, since then, a couple of studies which are almost about to publish with any luck, which show that we can sort of show this respiratory tract infection protection in infant populations in different countries. So again, it does seem to be a real effect that we can reproducibly show. Just moving on to applications in adults as well, also to show that a single probiotic strain can have sort of multiple benefits. We started looking at a study around constipation, apparently no laughing matter. This is around colonic transit time, which is related to constipation. So normally it takes food roughly 18 to 72 hours to get from one end to the other, so to speak. And if that's particularly slow, then that's associated with various, conditions, of which constipation is one, but obviously there is pain and discomfort associated with that as well. So again, we did this trial, standard sort of double-blind, placebo-controlled, blah, blah, blah. We had a control group, we had a high dose and a low dose HNO19 group, and the subjects were treated for just 2 weeks. And we looked at the colonic transit time, and also some of these discomfort symptoms. And what we found was a dose response in terms of the higher the dose of HM19, the more improvement in colonic transit time, which was a good thing to see. And we also saw then, another table, I'm sorry, to where I was talking to before. We also saw then a reduction in a lot of these GI symptoms. So again, that's something that we can sort of talk about colonic transit time, which is a bit of can be a tricky concept to get across to consumers, but if we can then start talking about reduced abdominal pain and all these other sort of reduced constipation, then we're starting to gain traction. We got something we can talk to consumers about that they will want. I should point out at this point, we have commercialized both these strains. We've licensed them to a commercial partner, and essentially they've concentrated on the areas that we don't have a lot of experience in ourselves, mainly dietary supplements and into sort of non-dairy food essentially, so into juices, into weird fermented fish in Scandinavia, that kind of thing. We left that to these people who have that experience. We've concentrated on dairy essentially. We have obviously our own branded products, our own milk powders, our own yogurts, our own cheeses. So that's what we really worked on. And so that sort of commercial arrangement has worked very well, because obviously this sort of information would be just as applicable for a dietary supplement as it is for a dairy powder. So a quick word too about DR20, our HNO1 strain. This one we have taken a different tack. We actually looked at eczema, which was introduced by Ali in a previous talk. So in New Zealand actually has quite high rates of allergy, including eczema. And so we had this study where the mothers, we took an at-risk group, so either the mother or the father had an allergy at some point in their life, which in New Zealand turns out to be around 80% of married couples are in this situation of one or both of them having ever had an allergy. Anyway, so we took these mothers and we gave them either HN01, H1N9, or the placebo just for the last couple of weeks of pregnancy, and then the infants got that same supplement every day for the first 2 years of life. And then we looked at the outcome in terms of eczema. And what we found basically is that HN01, after that first 2 years of treatment, reduced eczema by almost 50%, which is a fantastic result. There isn't really anything else out there, certainly no sort of pharmaceutical treatment that I'm aware of which will sort of offer that kind of benefit. Interestingly, HM9 had no effect whatsoever. It's a great probiotic in other respects, but for this outcome, it didn't really show much benefit at all. It's also interesting that when the study came back and had a look at the same kids at 4 years and 6 years, so they were no longer receiving the probiotic treatment anymore, this effect was maintained. So whatever is happening, we're seeing perhaps some evidence of immune training, these sort of long-term benefits of this early intervention on a long-term allergy. And in fact, at the 6-year time point, they started seeing decreases in atopy. So that's the underlying condition of high IgE in the blood, which sort of underlies a lot of allergies. And so even after 6 years, we're still starting to see these sort of benefits come through. So that was very exciting. So the problem here is, of course, how do we translate that into claims? It's very difficult, obviously, to talk about therapeutic claims. It's very difficult, obviously, to talk about any kind of claim in infant formula. So that's been a real struggle for us to be able to describe this message. How do we get this across to consumers? The last thing I'll quickly talk about is stability. The ability for those strains to get through the gut was established quite early, so that's great. We know that they can survive gut transit quite happily. The other thing is, how do we get the strain to the consumer in a live state? And our emphasis obviously was on dry powders, so milk powders and so on. What we've done is a lot of work trying to develop the stability, trying to develop ways of making them survive. There are two things which are quite important: temperature and water activity. So that's the sort of essentially the available moisture in the powder. And we've done some quite extensive work where we've taken sort of a matrix approach, where we've gone for various water activities and various temperatures at different points and a number of repeats at each point. And we've sort of really compared our strains with some of the competitor strains just to give us a feel for how good our stability is. And it came home to us when we were talking to another manufacturer of infant formula, as it happens, and they had this probiotic that we compared. So this is a competitor to HN019, and so under our conditions we provided them with their stability data, and they basically plotted what they could afford to put in their product. And so how much probiotic could they put in their product, and what conditions would that allow them to do? So essentially what they're saying is that there is a region of water activity. It costs money to take water out of powder, and once you get to extremely dry powders, it becomes more problematic. So if you can get powders in that range, that 0.16 to 0.18, then that means you are fairly confident that you will be able to put your probiotic in that powder, and at storage temperatures up to 28 degrees, you can guarantee that you can maintain the minimum number of probiotics over the 2-year shelf life of your product. But we were able then to show with our HN19 strain that we had better stability overall, which meant then that window of confidence that you can have in your product is increased markedly. So in this case, means that your storage temperatures can be up to 32 degrees, which is quite significant in countries where you don't have a lot of control over supply chain. So you don't know if your product's going to be in the back of a truck and sort of left out there in 30-degree heat all day, going from A to B. So having that confidence is great, and also we're able to show that enhanced stability in slightly wetter powders. So even that small difference in water activity meant quite a big difference in cost, and you don't need such dry powders then to put your probiotic in. So that meant that they took our H&O19 strain over the previous incumbent. So stability is very important and has been very useful to us. So just lastly, a couple of conclusions. The first angle is what is research for? In those golden halcyon days when John Smart was still doing research, it was pretty straightforward. It was, we got the strain, what can it do? What can we bring to the world? And everyone will be beating down our door to take these great probiotics from us. But of course, we went through those harsh years, and we've woken up from naivety, and it's a lot more to it than that. Safety is obviously a big issue, and safety is a very big issue. And so there has been a lot of work around making sure that this is safe. Obviously, you can't control dosage out in the wild, so if people want to consume nothing but yogurt all day, you've got to make sure that your probiotic will still be safe under those sort of conditions. And obviously there's this whole thing around health claims. What can you say about your product? What are you allowed to say? How much evidence do you have to produce to be able to say it? And often what we've found is it's just as important to convince the company internally that you're onto something. So some of this work that we've done has really been to show our sort of marketing arm, yes, look, we've got something here. This is a real benefit. We can do something with this. And then it's a question of, well, what can we say about it? How do we comply to all these health claims? And as we heard yesterday, that's by no means straightforward, and it's been a constant shifting battleground almost, trying to sort of get over that sort of hurdle. And also it's been very useful to have this sort of constant stream of research coming out, new news, people get bored and forgetful, so if you're able to come out and say, yes, we've got this benefit, oh look, we can do this, oh look, we can do that, that sort of keeps this thing in people's minds, and again, it helps when you were trying to sell probiotics in the final product. Also say then that it's been quite good being able to get into human trials quickly. It means that we're not sort of stuck in this sort of biomarker animal model sort of loop, that we're able to say, right, this is the benefit in humans. And it means now that we can show the benefit in humans, we can circle back now to have a look at mechanisms or biomarkers, because we know we've got something that works and we know what kind of biomarker we want to aim at, or what kind of benefit we want the biomarker to aim at. So that's been very useful as well. Lastly, probiotics not equal. You've got to have the right strain to do the right job, and that's a difficult concept to get across. Only one of these dogs you'd send out to fetch the paper. Only one of them would probably fit in your handbag. So you've got to get the right probiotic to deliver the specific health benefit, which means we've got to show what those specific health benefits are for each and every strain. So thank you, that's it. Thank you very much.